Princeton TV doesn't even deserve this show. We have such interesting, this is a salon on quick wit and mirth and talent and invigorating intellectual energy that we give off, and we should get paid more money. But anyway, we have again, who was on about 2 years ago, Peter Jeffrey de Krassel.
Correct.
He's professionally involved in representing American and Chinese corporate business interests in their efforts to bridge the gap between Eastern and Western cultures. Simple to say, hard to do. There's a lot of intrigue there. He is also a very international type person. He's written a new book, Peter D. Custom Made, M-A-I-D, Spin for a New World Disorder. In a nutshell, he says that America, through a lot of incompetence, short-sightedness, is being ripped off by China, and we, the American people, are footing the bill. That's a very, very quick synopsis. Do you want to, anyway, why did you say made in this book, M-A-I-D?
Because we, the people, the American taxpayers, are maids. We are constantly asked to clean up the mess career politicians make, and then we are asked to pay for the privilege. And as someone who spends a lot of time in Asia where maids are very cheap, I still haven't found a maid that'll pay for that privilege. So I don't understand why we American people constantly agree to clean up the mess career politicians make, and then are asked to pay for the privilege. So I'm referring to maids there as we the people.
But who's, are you talking going back to the S&L crisis up to 2008 with the banks, and that's what you're talking about? And we can't, you know, they screw up and.
Well, it's those are two recent examples of financial crises where the taxpayers have been asked to clean up the mess and then pay for it and foot the bill, while the people that created the mess get off scot-free. I mean, even in the recent 2008 financial crisis recession, there hasn't been one banker that has been sent to jail. Yeah. There hasn't been one politician that has lost office as a result of it. On the contrary, they have all benefited. The bankers have all gotten nice golden parachutes as their financial institutions collapse under them. And the bankers' lobbyists fund the politicians to get reelected while Americans are unemployed, the middle class is destroyed, jobs go overseas, and China and Asian countries basically have taken over the manufacturing that made America the great country, capitalistic, industrial leader that it was.
There's so much to say there.
Who in American politics is facing these problems that you cite?
Nobody that I know of.
Not Elizabeth Warren?
She is probably the most articulate person in that, and I do quote her in some of her recent statements in Custom Made Revolution, because she has tried and is a lone voice and is receiving a lot of criticism for it, and a lot of the adversaries and supporters of the existing system are doing everything in their power to vote her out of office.
But you know, the average everyday layman like me, you said a whole lot, we could maybe go back and forth, but do they really know what's going on? Someone tells me that free trade's great for the whole world. At the end, everyone will prosper. I mean, what jobs could come back to America? You point out that China is basically our factory, and money will flow to places where it could be efficiently, where you could have efficiently cheap labor and everything. So why would companies?
There's no such thing as free trade. That is also a nice political spin.
So you're saying this is all, we're being fed a diet of misinformation?
Absolutely, absolutely. The trade barriers, that is what a lot of the developing countries are complaining about, is farmers in Africa or South Central America or any developing country that have very good agricultural products cannot export to markets like America because of the barriers that are imposed, the subsidies.
Exactly. No one touches the subsidies.
Exactly, but that's, so what is free about it? If your trade is being subsidized and given tax benefits and barriers are imposed, what's free about it?
So you're saying that lobbyist-inspired, old-fashioned capitalism, which is more like conquering.
It's mercantilism, the old traditional imperial mercantilism clothed in new contemporary language that the public naively buys.
Article in the New York Times last week about these recent Republican primary elections with the Tea Party And there was an angle about the Tea Party I hadn't realized before, that a lot of the Tea Party, they don't like the old Republican establishment, which in effect acts for lobbyists from business,
Oh, yeah.
for business. And that, you know, these new Tea Party guys are actually against all that. So there could be unusual allies.
Yeah, when
going on.
Cantor lost, and the Republican speaker, not speaker, but the head of that, Lockheed's stock went down 3%, they said. He was a bagman for Lockheed, in a way.
Well, that is part of what I discuss in Custom Made Revolution, and the book will be coming out in the fall. This is the uncorrected galley that is now being edited and reviewed by various politicians and other authors I respect. But on that very point, the Occupy Wall Street movement and Tea Party movement actually have a lot in common. And if you listen very carefully, they're saying the same thing, which is shrink government, be fair, don't cater to the 1%, cater to the masses. So Occupy Wall Street says it's the 1% versus 99. The Tea Party says, forget the people on the top, what about all of us? What about the middle class? What about cutting back on taxes? What about giving basically people their rights again? So they're saying the same thing, but again, the way political spin is spun in this country, they're made out to be enemies and adversaries, whereas in reality they're really saying the same thing.
But how can a country deal with these massive corporations without using big government?
And we have elections that are so expensive to run. And
Well, one of the other things I advocate, which many others have advocated, is public finance of elections as well. And you basically have to deal with the two-party system. You have to tackle it. You have to try and introduce a new party or a new movement. If you look at all the elections that have taken place recently in other countries, be they Israel, be they Italy, even India, it's parties that have only been around less than a year or so that wind up making the new governments. They win the large blocks. The same thing happened in America with the Tea Party. When the Tea Party first emerged, they were winning wherever they were. Their candidates, and what happened? They basically dominate the Republican Party. The Republican Party now, especially after what happened to Cantor, is listening very carefully to what the Tea Party is saying. And the Tea Party is opposed to immigration. Immigration is dead. So it's all the new movements. So I think the way the political world is evolving, it's more into movements than parties. And party is a phrase of the old world order. And the new world order that I talk about, it's people's movements that are going to basically make the big difference in the political landscapes everywhere.
How do you go about doing research for this book? It's 1,000 pages. And
Correct.
There's a lot, it's very big concepts, things that are hard to understand.
Several things I do. I have a lot of political science and history students that do research for me, and two of my political idols are Mark Twain and Will Rogers.
Oh.
And both of them talked about how Will Rogers got his content every day from newspapers, and Mark Twain the same thing. Mark Twain would write and read. And most of the information is out there. I read 5, 6 newspapers at a minimum a day, anywhere up to 10, 15, whether they're American, European, Chinese, and get different points of views. And the same on the news channels. One of the things that I find kind of surprising in America is that most Americans only look at 1 or 2 channels, either CNN, Fox, or their local channel. Whereas a lot of people overseas will channel surf news channels, myself included, whether it's Al Jazeera, even here in the US, or BBC.
A lot of Americans under 40 aren't that curious either.
Exactly, but the information is out there. It's just a matter of how do you gather it and then put it all together.
I want to get into, and quickly though, you say that America, through misguided and bankrupt economic, financial, and foreign policies and alliances, has allowed China and its citizens to prosper at the expense and suffering of Americans.
Well, if you look at what has happened in China the last 10, 20 years, over 300 million people have been lifted out of poverty to middle class. that is a number larger than the entire population of America. And at the meantime, the American middle class has been decimated, and American jobs,
Stagnated wages, yeah, definitely.
and the jobs that those Americans were working at, most of them have moved to China. And they've been moved there by corporate America, because capitalism by its very nature is going to go where labor is the cheapest.
Right.
And so that is why I made that statement.
So you're saying we're helping China prosper, they're going to be our factory, we'll buy their products, but the middle class are buying things they can't afford anymore from a country that's allowed to take their jobs through American politicians' lack of wealth.
Well, the irony of that is what the middle class, or what was the middle class, is buying and can afford to buy are only products made in China, because they're made cheaper than the products in America. So indirectly, the consumer in America is also supporting the manufacturing in China.
Does global warming figure into your calculations here?
Absolutely. I talk about it at length, and it's a subject I've discussed in every one of my books, and it's a subject I've railed against going back to 1979, when I first rode my horse from my home in the Palisades to my office in Beverly Hills as a protest ride, encouraging people to pursue alternative energies back then. And then I did it again in 2005, and so climate change to me is a real threat, and it is something we have to address. And I bring out studies, even studies made by the U.S. Department of Defense, that are not widely publicized, about why the biggest threat to America and the world is climate change.
But the way our governments are going, this is all governments, see, when you get India and China wanting to just get to an average standard of living, it entails more energy use, more fossil fuel use.
Well, when insurance companies have to start paying more premiums, they're going to believe in global warming.
Well, it's not only that, but you have to put yourself in the place of China and India. They say, look, now that you guys, or your countries, developed countries, America, Europe, you've modernized, you've developed, and now you're telling us indirectly
that you can't do it.
We can't catch up with you.
We have to stay poor.
So, but if you look at who is actually resorting to renewable energies the fastest and spending the most money, it's China on solar energy and other alternatives, not America.
Well, so much has been opened up, and maybe come back again, and good luck with Pet Central Media, PCM. Which you can, what's that, PCM.com?
Pet Central Media is the new online veterinary service that we are partnering with veterinarians in the U.S. to provide online pharmacies that are endorsed by veterinarians to pet parents across America, China, and the world. And once that is up and running in the fall of this year, then I will devote full time to the book and step back from Pet Central Media.
And I'll buy stock when it goes public. Thank you very much.